So this method of validation is foundational when we learn Ayurveda. So 3 processes are described: Uddesham, Lakshanam and Pariksha. So how do we study the Astitvam, Jneyatvam and Abhidheyatvam of a topic? Is through Uddesha, Lakshana and Pariksha. You always need some tools before you start the study of some subject. And that is coming through what is called as Uddesha. What do you have to look for? Some guidance is required. And that is called as Uddesha. Lakshana means some definitions. If you are, now we will take Ama as a subject. What are the points that we have to keep in mind when we study the subject Ama? So that is Uddesha. And if you have a knowledge of Uddesha and Lakshana, then only you can engage in the process of Pariksha. Pariksha is actually the verification, bringing these concepts into your own experience. So this is what we call, this is where we use the 3 tools. Uddesha we get from Aptopadesha. Lakshana we get from the Shastra. And Pariksha is our own application of Pratyaksha and Anumana. So using these 3 processes, we will try to understand how to get an insight into the concept of Srotas and Ama. In other words, we say when we have to study a topic, we use a 3-pronged approach: Shruti, Yukti and Anubhava. You can understand a topic only if you bring these 3 things together. That is Shruti, Yukti and Anubhava. Sometimes you have Shruti but no Yukti and no Anubhava. Sometimes you have a very good Yukti but it is not backed up by Shruti, or you don't have a Anubhava. So you can find this is the challenge that we face when we study Ayurveda. It is a struggle to bring all the 3 together. So you can say you have understood a topic correctly only when we bring Shruti, Yukti and Anubhava together. And also in Ayurveda, our knowledge system, it's a 3-tier structure. Means there is Tattva, Shastra and Vyavahara. Behind every activity, there is a Shastra. Behind every Shastra, there is a Tattva. This is a unique concept in Ayurveda: principle, theory and practice. Normally we talk about theory, practice, but in Ayurveda, behind the theory there is a principle. So research usually means understanding even principles behind theories. People who are just practitioners, they work at the level of Vyavahara. People who are teachers, they work at the level of Shastra. People who are researchers, they will work at the level of Tattva. So now we are going into our topic. Before that, I want to just ask you a question. Who is supposed to do this research in Ayurveda? Our texts have themselves told who is an adhikari to do research. You have any idea? So in the Charaka Samhita you can find in many places he says, Buddhimadam tu swanumana yukti kushalanam anuktartha jnanaya. 2 types of buddhi will approach to study Ayurveda. One buddhi will be able to get anuktartha jnanam, get more than what is mentioned in the text. There is another kind of buddhi which is Alpa buddhinam tu yathokta acharanameva shastam, where even to understand what is described is very difficult. So 2 types of buddhis are there. So only that buddhi which is able to go to anuktartha jnanam, only for them research will be successful. So this process of enquiry is basically for people who have this ability to go beyond what is described in the text. So with this introduction, I want to come to our topic today. We will study Srotas and Ama, but not everything, because now we have only little more time left. But I want to just demonstrate that how, if we approach it from an Ayurvedic thought process, we will be able to relate it more in terms of our experience and maybe use these concepts in a more clinically relevant manner. So first we are talking about Srotas. I think the most beautiful description of Srotas is found in which text? Charaka Samhita. Because we have an entire chapter devoted to Srotas. And as we read this Sroto Vimanam, our very conception of the human body changes. Because Charaka is telling you that there is nothing but Srotas in the body. Body is nothing but spaces. Which means they had an understanding, like you can imagine the body is considered like a porous substance. Pores. Which is why in Ayurveda we believed that when you do dhara, abhyanga, the body has the ability, if you can make the substance sukshma, two things are there. The knowledge of Srotas tells you that the body has micropores, that you can get your medicine into the most minute spaces in your body. If you make the medicine more and more sukshma, then it can penetrate into all the minute Srotases. This is a very important understanding on the basis of which our pharmaceutical systems developed and also our treatment procedures develop. Body is like a sponge. If you pour things inside, it will just take it. But it is not, it's a very selectively absorbing sponge. So two things are required. This is a very deep insight we get when we just read the first few passages in the Sroto Vimana. So here I want to tell you very clearly, it has been described. Charaka tells here that he is explaining Srotas in a way that will benefit the Alpa Buddhis and also the people who are little more intelligent. He wants to explain Srotas in such a way that it doesn't confuse the Alpa Buddhi, but it will stimulate the. So we are trying to look at how these concepts can stimulate us to take a little more deeper thought into this whole process. So here the first point is that when we talk about Srotases, we think that there are 13 Srotases. But how many of us have really dwelt a little bit more on Charaka's statement that aparisankheyani? The real truth is that Srotases are aparisankhey. And only yathasthulam we have described 13 Srotases. And if you look at these 13 Srotases, you can find they are also very categorical. It's not a factual description. They are functional classification of the Srotas in Charaka. The input, prana, udaka and anna. The process, rasa to shukra. And then the output, which means sweda, mutra and purisha. So you can see the very classification of Srotas is to show how the body functions as a system, how these spaces are organized to create an input, process, output system. So Charaka says everything in the body happens in the with the witness of the Srotas. Without the Srotas, nothing moves in the body. So it's a very foundational understanding of the human body. We need to understand the Sroto Vimana more than anatomy. Because this functional description is the basis for all our treatments. Are you able to follow what I am saying? So we are looking at if Srotases are aparisankheya. But then he immediately stops and says, for Alpa Buddhinam, I will tell you yathasthulam, that there are only 13 Srotases. For if you are not interested in deeper exploration, you need to only understand 13 Srotases. Now I want to tell you some challenges that we face when we study and try to understand. There are two aspects to the study of Srotas. One is the Moolam and the other is Prakopa Vijnana. So Charaka tells that we are describing the Srotas with two purposes. One is to explain what is the Moola of a Srotas, and the other is in such a way that Prakopa Vijnanatascha, Moolatascha, Prakopa Vijnanatascha. So here we will just look at some problems that we face. Now the first thing is the Moolam of the Srotas. I don't know how many of you have tried to study this. There are some areas where we get confused, is it not? Yes or no? Yes. So you have a doubt whether what do they mean by this Moolam. So today I will just take 2 Srotases only as example. Not everything, because we will not have time to deal with all the 13. 2 which are little bit more difficult than, one is the Medovaha Srotas and the other is the Udagavaha Srotas, where both we have some confusions regarding its Moolasthana and Prakopa Vijnanam. But first of all, I would like to know, do you think there is a difficulty in understanding these 2 Srotases? Because you look at Chakrapani, he is telling there is a difficulty. He doesn't understand and he confesses it. He is telling that Sushruta has told in the case of Medovaha Srotas, Vrikka and Kati as the 2 sthanas, and Charaka has told Vapavahanam and Vrikka. And he tells, I don't understand. So he confesses by saying, Tatra adindriyartha darsigamye nasmad vidhanam buddhaya prabhavanti. So this confusion has started from the time of Chakrapani and we have left it aside. It's easy to tell this and escape. Tatra adindriyartha darsigamye nasmad vidhanam buddhaya prabhavanti. But today, we are split the body open. You can look into the interior. You can search the srotas, every minute space in the body. You can. So what was maybe atindriyam, most of it has now become also indriya gamyam. So when we have that extended ability of our sense organs, we have to try and see whether we can still make some sense of it. Why is there a difference of opinion between Sushruta and okay. So Sushruta tells Vapavahanam and Vrikka and Kati and Vrikka, and Charaka says, yeah. So if you look at Vapavahanam, it's still little easy to understand that lot of fat is stored. Today that is a problem many of us have. That we carry apples or pears. It's called apple shaped obesity or pear shaped obesity. So you can see 2 areas where fat get deposited. So if it is Kati, Sushruta is in favor of pear shaped obesity. So he talked about Kati as one of the sthana. Charaka talked about Vapavahanam, which means typically apple shaped obesity. Sushruta is little in favor of females, I think. He talks about Artavavaha Srotas. Charaka doesn't talk about it. So Charaka is talking about the male body, which is more having a tendency to get apple shaped obesity. Sushruta is talking about the female body, which is more having a tendency to get the pear shaped. Kati is the sthana. So Kati and Vapavahana we can to understand to some extent that these are 2 locations where a lot of the excess fat of the body is stored. But when it comes to Vrikka, what is the connection between Medas and Vrikka? How does Vrikka become the Moola Sthana for Medas? This is a question that we have. So, as I said, we can tell that Tatra Atindriyartha Darshigamye Nasmad Vidhanam Buddhaya Prabhavanti. That is one way to escape this question. It is Atindriyam and our buddhis are very limited, so we cannot understand. But if we were to inquire a little further, there are studies which have shown that apple-shaped people who carry more fat around their bellies than their hips may be at risk for kidney disease. There is a very strong correlation between belly fat and kidney disease. If you have pear-shaped obesity, if you carry more fat in your Kati sthana, then it is not as much problem for the kidneys as it will be if you carry fat in your Vapavahana. So if you bring Sushruta and Charaka together, I told you Prakopa Vijnanam, and the Moola Sthanas of Srotas are also many. It is not just, they have only explained some of the important sthanas. So what we now understand here is that today, even in modern science, they are using what is called as the waist hip ratio to study the risk of damage to kidney because of fat. That is, you compare the Kati and Vapavahanam, and using these two sthanas of Medas, we study the risk that is there for Vrika. Are you able to follow what I'm saying? So which means there is a directly proportional risk when you have the fat in the Vapavahanam. It's more risk to the Vrika. But if it is in the Kati, then the risk is inversely proportional. Are you able to follow? So the waist hip ratio is a tool that we use today to understand the risk of damage to kidney based on the accumulation of fat in your system. So if you look at it in this way, you can find that the concept of Medovaha Srotas, Moolam being Vrika, Vapavahanam, Vrika and Kati makes a lot of sense. So when you are thinking beyond the Alpa Buddhi level, at the Alpa Buddhi level you have to just accept what is written. But when you try to move forward, your thinking becomes little more broad. I mean, you can make sense of why Sushruta mentioned Kati and why Charaga mentioned. So it is, what is the use? Two purposes of description of Sudha. Second one is Prakopa Vijnanata. The purpose of studying the Moola of a Srotas is to give an idea about the Prakopa that will happen to the Srotas. Is it not? So you can find that using the Moola Sthanas of the Medovaha Srotas, even today modern science has developed a method to understand Prakopa. A Prakopa that can damage the kidneys. So now what they are saying is they don't know why belly fat might be bad for the kidneys. They don't know. But it is definitely, there is a correlation. And so you can see how our modern science has only arrived at a correlation. They have not been able to connect kidney with Medas. They have not understood that connection. So you can find in our textbooks we have already established this connection between belly fat and the kidneys. And even the fat that you consume, there are studies which show that coconut oil, the fat in coconut oil, kidney fat is very different from the fat in the rest of the body. So the intake of fat that you take will very much regulate the functioning and health of your kidneys. So I'm just giving you a little thought to probe more about the Srotas with the help of new knowledge that we have, with the help of Pratyaksha. The next Srotas I want to bring for discussion is the Udagavaha Srotas. Now Udagavaha Srotas also a little difficult to understand for two reasons. One is it's a Udagavaha Srotasam Moolam Talu Klomacha. So first of all, Talu, of course we get some dryness when there is dehydration in the Talu. At least to some extent we can think about it. But Kloma is very confusing, isn't it? Anybody knows what is Kloma? Some people say it is gallbladder. Many theories are there. It's not properly identified. So now we will try to see with the use of, instead of, a direct understanding of what the Kloman should be. Now for that we need to understand water absorption in the body. Have you ever imagined if you drink a cup of water, how soon will it get absorbed? Where is the maximum absorption happening in the body? See, when you drink water, even from the mouth, and before it even is swallowed, a lot of water gets absorbed. Not very much, small amount. The first critical point in drinking water is the passage from the oral cavity down to the esophagus. So the water is held for a little time in the mouth, then it flows, The second point where it is held for some time is the stomach. Absorption of water in your body very much depends on how soon the water is emptied from the stomach to the small intestine. The vigorous absorption of water happens only in the small intestine. So it is like there are two junctions through which water has to move before it can get absorbed in the body. One is the junction at the talu, because from that water moves from the mouth into the esophagus. It doesn't stay in the esophagus. Mouth it can stay. If you have a block here in the throat, you cannot swallow water. Then only limited absorption will happen. Once it gets into the stomach is in control now. Only if the stomach empties the water into the small intestine, so water can be absorbed as soon as few minutes to even hours, depending on how this process happens. So you can see the greatest control of the absorption of water is depending on the gastric emptying. And this is if you drink a lot of water with food, there is a delayed emptying of the water into the small intestine. Means water will get absorbed much slowly. If you drink cold water, gastric emptying is faster. Means water will very quickly come to the small intestine. More quickly it will get absorbed. So if you look here, see what is the description of kloma? Mamsa peshi chaya ratna patmagaram adhomukham tasya dakshinado kloma yakritcha. Tasya dakshinata. Kloma and yakrit are said to be seen together. And if you really look at this picture here, you can find that the pylorus of the stomach is almost touching the yakrit. Is it not? Dakshinata, on the right side of the heart. Near the yakrit is the kloma. And if you simply understand this process of the movement of water in your system, you can find that the pyloric sphincter is the most crucial organ that determines the absorption of water in the body. Water intake that you take, it is the pyloric sphincter. The pyloric sphincter is constricted. One major complication that happens is dehydration. If you have pyloric sphincter constriction, water doesn't move into the small intestine. And it is said that a severe dehydration can come in. So, Udaga Vahanam, Srotasam Moolam, Talu, Klomacha. So, this is only my opinion. I don't want to drive. I'm just making you to think. What I want to say is, in the chapter on Srotas, there is a clear explanation that Anuktartha Jnanam, Buddhimadam Anuktartha Jnanaya. So, if you think more, you will be able to understand more about the Moola of the Srota. So, we have to think beyond Chakrapani if you want to understand Srotas. So, what I am suggesting here is that if you look at the descriptions of kloma, and if you look at the process of water absorption in the body, it makes a lot of sense to think of that end portion of the stomach as what was described as klomen. There is also a description of kloma shosham in Ayurveda. Kloma shosham means the shushkada of the, if you consider it as the shushkada of the pylorus region of the stomach, then it immediately causes dehydration. Are you able to follow? So we can say the movement of udaga in the body, one of the major sources of water is through the mouth. So here is mild absorption in the oral cavity. Then there is a passage, it moves through the esophagus. In the stomach is the next level of absorption, which is mild absorption, moderate. Then when it passes to the intestines, there is vigorous absorption. So this is how udaga is taken into the body. So there are two junctions which clearly determine, how or which control. So they have been called as the moola of the two srotases. One is talu and the other is the kloma. So what I want to point out is that, see, when we study the concepts in Ayurveda, Uddesha, Lakshana and Pariksha are essential. That we have to bring it to a level where we are able to experientially understand it. And then we will be able to get a deeper insight into what they probably meant. So it is for Prakopa Vijnanam that the moolas of the Srotas are described for an understanding of the Prakopa. Okay. So these are two ideas that I wanted to discuss today about Srotas. And you said, you can imagine, we have to go beyond the thought of the 13 Srotasas if you want to get a picture of what the Srotas. So it's a beautiful description of the Ashtanga Hridayam. Bisanamiva sukshmani durat pravisrutani cha dwarani srotasam dehe raso yairupachiyate. So Vagbhata is talking about Srotas as extremely microscopic, whereas Charaka says that it is vritta sthulanya anunicha. Srotasas, Charaka conceives even the vritta sthula Srotasas and the sukshma Srotasas. But in Charaka Samhita we'll come to that. Sotamsi dirghana agrita. But this Visanamiva, see, just look at this. This is the lotus stem. If you take cross section of the lotus stem, you can see how porous it is. So this is our conception of the human body. It is extremely porous. And if you look at this, you can find that what Charaka talks about as Srodamsi khalu parinamam apadyamananam dhatunam abhivahini bhavanti ayanarthena sravanat Srodamsi. So everything, yavanda purushe murti mando bhava vishashas tavanda eva asmin srotasam prakara vishesha. Which means for every particle in the body, there is a specific srotas. So the body is in a continuous state of dynamism. There are the micropores in the system through which there is a continuous movement of substances which are undergoing a process of transformation. So we move from just the 13 srotasas into innumerable aparisankheya srotas as we move from the vritta sthula srotasas into the anu srotasas. And I think in Ayurveda our focus of Deha Shuddhi, our focus of Aushadha Prayoga, it is all based on a very sukshma understanding of the anu srotasas at the anu level. That is why our medicines we have to do the bhavana. In everything we can find this view of the human body is the basis. When we even put a oil in the body, we have this picture of the srotas in our mind. So I want to conclude. We don't have much time. In the next 5 minutes, I think a few questions about Ama. From a research point of view, what are the key things that... So first question is, what is Ama? How is Ama formed? I will quickly rush through it because we don't have time. How is Ama classified and how can we treat Ama? So the first question is, it's a common misunderstanding that Ama is usually, even if not in the Ayurvedic community or in the early stages of study of Ama, we tend to equate Ama with indigestion. Because we have heard even many doctors saying that Ayurveda thinks that all diseases are caused by indigestion. But is Ama really indigestion? We have a separate term for indigestion. It is called as Ajirnam. And Ama and Ajirna have been very clearly distinguished. Unless we have conceptual clarity, we cannot bring these concepts into a clinical or applied perspective. So here we talked about Ushmal Volpa Bhalatvena. So definitely Ama and indigestion are linked, are related. But Ama is not indigestion. Ajirna causes Ama, but it's not by itself Ama. So when can you say that Ama has formed in the body? Only when Rasa Dhatu is involved. That is why in the definition of Ama it is said, Ushmanolpa Balatvena Dhatum Adhyam Apachitam Dushtam Amasya Gadam Rasa